So last night was Game 2 of the Edmonton Oilers Round 1 playoff series against the Los Angeles Kings. And this one could not have ended any better. A 6-0 shutout for the Edmonton Oilers. A huge win for the team. And just such an incredible turnaround after Game 1. Because I think that a lot of people were definitely not happy with where this series was going after Game 1. I think a lot of people out there must have been fearing a repeat of some of the previous year's playoffs that, definitely did not go the way that we want them to. But after last night, it is, there is absolutely no shortage of cause to be optimistic about where this team's going to go throughout the remainder of this series, and really through the remainder of the playoffs. And some of the players that were responsible for that are players that, over the past year or so or more, are these same players that have had targets on their back in the eyes of, what I would call some of the toxic subgroups within the Edmonton Oilers fan base. So really, last night was not just a huge W for the team, which I love to see, but it was also a big fat L for a lot of these people that are always out there looking for another player to scapegoat, for another guy to run out of town. And in order to kind of understand exactly why, you only have to look at 5 of the players who had huge contributions to that win last night. I've got 5 in particular on my mind that I'm thinking of right off the bat. And so first of all, let's start with Josh Archibald. Was definitely a guy that had a target on his back, at portions of the last year. And, he was one of these guys that had that target on his back, really for reasons that had nothing to do with the way that he plays hockey. It actually had something to do with a decision that he made away from the ice, and that was his decision to not get the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, my personal opinion about whether or not he made the right decision, I'll put it to you this way. He made a decision that I wouldn't have made. He made a decision that I didn't make. But it's his body and it's his choice, and he has every right to make that decision or not. And whether or not you think that he made the right decision, if you think that he made the wrong decision, then you should at least be able to appreciate the fact that, in basically seeing an entire year taken off of his hockey career, he's paid a pretty dear price for it. It wasn't like it was just something that he got to skate away with, for nothing. Myocarditis has taken a pretty serious chunk out of his hockey career. Should give a lot of people who think that he made a good decision there really think twice about whether or not they think that, but let's get past that. One thing that his decision to not get the vaccine definitely should not mean is it should not mean the end of his hockey career the way a lot of people thought that it should have. And I think that a lot of fans right now should be pretty thankful that he didn't, because he got back into the lineup last night and he had a really big impact. His name hasn't showed up on the score sheet the way that a lot of these other players I'm going to talk about today have. But he was definitely a factor, especially at the penalty killing end. One thing that Josh Archibald has definitely brought to this team since he's been a member of it, is very strong penalty killing. And so far, the Edmonton Oilers have not given up a power play goal in this series. Josh Archibald is not the only reason for that, but he is part of that reason. And so the next player that I'm going to talk about is a little bit more controversial yet. And of course, that is Evander Kane, number 91. Now, earlier this year, when I came out and I was an early advocate for the Oilers giving him another chance in the league, a lot of people thought that I was absolutely crazy. They said, no, you wouldn't want a player like that on your team. And there were a lot of people who came out and said that Evander Kane shouldn't even get a chance, not necessarily because of things that he's known to have done, but because of things that he was just accused of. For a lot of these people, the details that there had been investigations that hadn't really found a lot of support for a lot of these accusations didn't really seem to matter very much, because they actually came back with this really, really imbecilic argument of, oh, well, a hockey team's not a court of law, and we don't have to, we don't have to give due process or investigate things. And the accusation was enough to end his career in the eyes of these people. And a lot of Oilers fans should be very thankful that we didn't give in to those very, very small and petty, and just almost tyrannical voices. Because Evander Kane has had a very strong and very positive impact on this team. I mean, with 2 goals last night, he was a very big reason why the Edmonton Oilers won that game. And with the way that he's played throughout the remainder of this season after he joined the Oilers, there's actually a very strong argument that maybe the Oilers might not have made it into the playoffs at all if it wasn't for his presence on this team. Now, if they'd investigated these things and found them to be true, yeah, that would be a different story. I'd look at this very differently. But the people who thought that Evander Kane doesn't even deserve another chance and that mere accusations should end his hockey career, yeah, they took a fat L last night, and I couldn't be happier to see that. And so another player, Zack Cassian. At least now we're starting to get into the players that people could actually criticize based on the way that they played on the ice. Because, yeah, Zack Cassian has struggled a little bit over the past couple of seasons. Especially that COVID season. With the empty building, really did not affect his game very well. I've heard a lot of talk about how Zack Cassian is a player whose game is fed by the energy in the building. Although I think that's kind of an incomplete, that's kind of an incomplete detail. It isn't just that Zack Cassian's game is fed by the energy of the crowd. The way that Zack Cassian plays the game also feeds the energy of the crowd. And so those two things work together and at times become like this, this fantastic little hockey dynamo. And last night, you really saw that out of Zack Cassian. He came into that game like a wrecking ball. He was everywhere. He was hitting everything. Like any LA Kings player that came near the puck when he was on the ice, he really gave them something to think about. And he was a huge part of that win last night. And there have been all sorts of people out there who have been talking about how we need to trade Zack Cassian. As a matter of fact, I think I saw this just this last week, that there was some guy writing on some sort of a website, describing Zack Cassian as a trade candidate, which, by the way, the playoffs is not the time for that. Let these players focus on this playoffs with this team instead of some, mythical next season with some other team where they might not even be. Cut that shit out. Knock it off. Now is not the time. In particular, Jesse Puljujarvi has been on the wrong end of some commentary by some pretty high-profile people in the media, who really, when you think about it, I think, during the Peter Chiarelli years, they kind of got used to having their way in the terms of the way that the Edmonton Oilers, managed their personnel. They traded Jordan Eberle just because the media got up their, just because the media got up their ass to get Eberle traded. And that was not something that made this team better. And no, getting rid of Jesse Puljujarvi would definitely not make this team any better. I mean, you have to consider exactly what it is that we have in Jesse Puljujarvi. I mean, yeah, maybe Jesse Puljujarvi does not necessarily score in the same, at the clip that a lot of people would have expected out of a player drafted, in his position. But what we do have in Jesse Puljujarvi is a potentially elite two-way player in this league. And even though I have actually somehow encountered people that don't seem to like to hear this, I mean, Scotty Bowman was very much right when he said this, and history bears this to be true. Defense is what wins championships. And so there does seem to be a lot of talk surrounding Jesse Puljujarvi that, he's just not productive enough. Which to me kind of puts a bit of a skewed perspective on what exactly it is that we think of as production. We don't think of defense as production. Defense is what wins championships. I think really we do need to change our perspective on that if we don't look at defensive play as being productive. And thank God that Jesse Puljujarvi came back to this team, because he has definitely made this team better. And no, this team will not get any better for getting rid of Jesse Puljujarvi. So we really need to knock that off. And so then last but not least, and this one is my personal favorite, hug your goalie, apologize to Mike Smith. All of you people that were out there saying that he was done in the league, you were wrong. Now your last outstanding argument, the 9-game playoff losing streak. Call us back when he wins in the playoffs. Hey, guess what? Last night, Mike Smith posted a 30-shot shutout. He turned aside. 30 shots. A 6-0 shutout win. Hug your goalie. Apologize to Mike Smith. You were wrong. Cut the horse shit. Now, of course, I realize that it's not so easy a thing for a lot of people to just admit that they were wrong about something, but hey, there you have it, okay? I'm just the one that told you. I'm not the one that made you wrong, I'm just the one who told you. And so now it is time to finally hear it, okay? Apologize to Mike Smith. Come on. Now, personally, I don't want to be Mr. Petty. I don't want to be Mr. Told You So. But there are a lot of people out there for this last year in particular that I've been telling, hey, this idea of human disposability, that you can just get rid of these guys because you think that they have nothing to offer, and that you're even the person who should get to decide whether or not these players have nothing left to offer. That kind of thinking has never made this team better before. It will never make this team better. And last night we got a huge playoff win just to stick it in your craw. And I don't know, maybe that is a little bit petty. Maybe that is a little bit small. But you know what? If there's anything related to this team that I am willing to, that I'm willing to be a little bit petty over and willing to be a little bit small over, it's going to be the players on this team. Of all the things that you can count on, I mean, I might have criticisms of a player every so often, but at the end of the day, I am always going to be there for the boys. Berta. You can always expect that I'm always going to stand up for these guys when I think that, some portions of the fan base are being unfair to them. And if they come up with a big win like that, to vindicate that, yeah, you can doubt that. You can bet that you're going to hear about it.